Before anything else, the writing style always begins by slowing the reader down. It never rushes into information. It understands that the modern mind is noisy, distracted, and guarded. So the very first move this kind of script makes is not to explain, but to create stillness. It gently asks the listener to pause, to breathe, to soften. This is not accidental. The opening lines are designed to lower mental resistance and move the audience from a thinking state into a feeling state. Instead of saying, "Here is a psychology fact," it says something like, "Take a moment," or "Before you continue, pause." These phrases are subtle commands. They tell the nervous system that it is safe to relax. Once the body relaxes, the heart opens. And when the heart opens, the message can enter deeply. Right after creating this calm, the script establishes emotional authority. It tells the listener that what they are about to hear is not random, not ordinary, not just content. It frames the message as meaningful, almost destined. Words like "this is not just words," "this message found you," or "this is meant for you" are used to create a sense of personal relevance. The listener begins to feel chosen rather than targeted. This is extremely important. When someone feels chosen, they stop questioning and start receiving. The title about not being able to stop thinking about him is not addressed directly yet. Instead, the script prepares the emotional ground so that when the idea is introduced, it lands softly but deeply. The opening also avoids specifics. It does not name the person, does not describe details, and does not define the relationship. This vagueness is intentional. By keeping things open-ended, the script allows the listener to project their own experience into the message. The him becomes whoever is already living in their thoughts. This is why the writing feels personal to millions of people at once. Each listener fills in the blanks with their own story. The script does not tell them what to feel. It mirrors what they are already feeling and gently validates it. Once the emotional door is open, the script slowly introduces the core idea. In this case, the idea is that persistent thoughts are not meaningless. They are framed as signals, signs, or messages from something larger than logic. The word universe is used not as a scientific claim, but as a symbolic container. It represents fate, timing, emotional energy, and unseen connections. This allows the script to speak to both emotional and spiritual listeners without alienating either. It does not say the universe guarantees this, but instead suggests that patterns of thought often carry meaning. This suggestion is powerful because it does not force belief, it invites reflection. As the script moves into the middle, it shifts from atmosphere to explanation, but the explanation is never clinical. It does not lecture. Instead, it narrates inner experiences. It talks about how thoughts return when the mind is quiet, how certain people appear in our awareness without effort, how even distractions fail to erase their presence. These descriptions are intentionally slow and repetitive. Repetition here is not filler, it is reinforcement. Each repeated idea sinks deeper, making the listener feel understood rather than taught. In the middle portion, the script often introduces inner conflict. It explains that when you cannot stop thinking about someone, it is rarely just obsession or imagination. It is often the result of unresolved emotional energy. This is where psychology is blended with emotional storytelling. Rather than using terms like attachment theory or cognitive fixation, the script describes behaviors and feelings that the listener recognizes instantly. It talks about suppressed emotions, unspoken words, unfinished conversations, and connections that never found closure. These are universal experiences, and by describing them gently, the script builds credibility without sounding academic. At the same time, the script subtly shifts perspective. It begins by focusing on the listener's thoughts, but then it introduces the idea that the other person may also be involved emotionally. This is done carefully, without making bold claims. It uses phrases like often, sometimes, or many times, which protect the listener from feeling misled. It suggests that deep connections tend to be mutual, even when unspoken. This is where the emotional pull strengthens. The listener starts to wonder if the thoughts they are having might be shared on some level. Throughout the middle section, the script maintains a push-and-pull rhythm. It acknowledges doubt and fear while also offering hope. It validates skepticism by saying things like you might try to ignore it or you may tell yourself it means nothing. Then it gently counters that doubt by pointing out patterns that feel too consistent to be random. This balance is crucial. If the script were only hopeful, it would feel unrealistic. If it were only doubtful, it would feel heavy. By holding both, it mirrors the listener's internal dialogue, which makes the experience feel authentic. Another important aspect of the middle is how it treats overthinking. Instead of labeling it as weakness, the script reframes it as sensitivity, awareness, or emotional depth. This reframe is deeply comforting. Many people feel ashamed of thinking too much about someone. By presenting it as a sign of a meaningful connection rather than a flaw, the script reduces self-judgment and replaces it with self-compassion. This emotional relief keeps the listener engaged and receptive. The script also uses time as a psychological tool. It often mentions quiet moments, late nights, still mornings, or pauses in the day. These references create intimacy. They remind the listener of moments when thoughts surface naturally, without effort. By anchoring the message in these familiar times, the script feels lived in rather than theoretical. The listener is not imagining a concept, they are remembering experiences. As the middle progresses, the idea of the universe as a communicator becomes more symbolic. The script suggests that when something keeps returning to your awareness, it is asking to be acknowledged. Not necessarily acted upon immediately, but understood. This removes pressure. The listener is not told to chase, confess, or decide. They are simply invited to notice. This lack of urgency is what paradoxically makes the message more powerful. It respects the listener's emotional pace. When the script begins moving toward the end, it shifts again, this time toward reassurance. It starts to consolidate the emotional journey it has taken the listener on. It reminds them that their feelings are valid, that their experience is shared by many, and that they are not imagining depth where none exists. This is where statements like "you are not weak," "you are not foolish," or "you are not alone in this" appear. These lines act like emotional anchors. They ground the listener after exploring something intangible. The ending does not try to resolve the situation. It does not say what will happen with him, and it does not promise a reunion or confession. Instead, it emphasizes meaning over outcome. It suggests that the presence of these thoughts indicates growth, awakening, or emotional honesty. This is a critical choice. By avoiding concrete predictions, the script stays safe, believable, and widely applicable. More importantly, it leaves the emotional loop open, which keeps the message lingering in the listener's mind. Near the very end, the script often invites self-reflection. It asks gentle questions rather than making statements. Questions like, "Did someone come to your mind?" or "Does this feel familiar?" These questions do two things at once. They personalize the message further, and they prompt internal engagement. The listener is no longer just consuming. They are participating mentally. This increases emotional investment and memory retention. The final call to action is deliberately soft. It comes after emotional validation, not before. By the time the script asks for a comment, like, or subscription, the listener already feels connected. The request does not feel transactional. It feels communal. Comment prompts are framed as sharing or understanding rather than obligation. This encourages genuine interaction instead of passive scrolling. Overall, this writing style works because it prioritizes emotional experience over information. It does not aim to prove, it aims to resonate. It uses slow pacing, gentle language, and symbolic framing to bypass skepticism and speak directly to the heart. The start creates safety and openness, the middle builds recognition and meaning, and the end offers reassurance without closure. This leaves the listener feeling seen, understood, and quietly hopeful. In the context of the title about not being able to stop thinking about him, this approach allows the script to honor the complexity of human emotion. It does not reduce the experience to a single explanation. Instead, it holds space for mystery, psychology, and feeling to coexist. That is why this style feels deep without being heavy, comforting without being false, and powerful without being loud. It does not shout truths. It whispers reflections. And those reflections stay with the listener long after the video ends.